For 16 years, the son of one of the richest men alive carried a mystery no expert could understand. He never slept. Not once. Not as a newborn. Not as a toddler. Not as a growing teenager. While other children closed their eyes and drifted into quiet rest, he remained awake, watching the world in a way that made even his own family uncomfortable. He didn't cry at night. He didn't complain. He simply stayed awake, hour after hour, like someone waiting for something that never came. His father built satellites, transportation systems, and technologies that pushed nations forward, yet he couldn't solve the one problem inside his home. He invited doctors from every continent. Specialists studied the boy's brain for hours. Machines scanned every inch of him. And every time, the same conclusion returned. There is nothing medically wrong with him. But there was. Everyone could see it. The boy's eyes were always tired, always red, always distant, as if they were trying to remember something he'd never lived. His hands trembled some nights. Other nights, he hummed unfamiliar melodies under his breath, quiet enough to ignore, but unsettling enough to send chills through anyone who heard them. Therapies were attempted, treatments were tested, herbal remedies, psychological methods, high-end sleep chambers, everything failed. And with each failed attempt, the shadows in that mansion grew deeper, because the world outside believed the family lived in pure luxury, while behind the curtains, the nights were filled with worry. Priests visited, faith leaders prayed, scientists argued. Even the father's closest advisors whispered that maybe the boy didn't have a condition. Maybe he had a purpose. As the years passed, the family exhausted every option they could think of, and every night, the lights in the boy's room stayed on, glowing softly through the windows like a signal no one could decipher. Then, without warning, the routine changed. A new nanny arrived. She wasn't hired through any agency. She wasn't recommended by anyone the family trusted. She simply showed up with calm eyes and a quiet voice, and for reasons no one fully understood, the billionaire allowed her in. She carried no papers, no credentials, no evidence of previous work, just a small wooden music box, old enough to belong to another century. When she met the boy, he stared at her as though he recognized a memory he had never lived, and she looked back with an expression that suggested she knew more about him than anyone else ever had. That night, while the mansion settled into its usual unease, she sat beside the boy's bed and opened her mouth. What came out wasn't a lullaby anyone had ever heard. It wasn't in any known language. It wasn't recorded in any musical archive. It wasn't familiar to the parents, the staff, or even the boy's previous specialists. But the moment she sang, something in the room shifted. The boy, who had never slept a single day in his life, stopped moving. His breathing steadied. His hands relaxed. His heartbeat softened into a calm rhythm that none of the machines had ever detected. His eyelids lowered slowly, trembling as if unsure whether they were allowed to close. And then they did. For the first time since the day he was born, the boy slept. The parents stood frozen at the doorway, unable to speak, unable to understand what they were seeing. The staff whispered prayers. The monitors glowed steadily, and the nanny simply kept singing as if she had been waiting 16 years for that exact moment. But behind the scenes, something far more shocking was taking shape, something the family couldn't name, something the father couldn't buy his way out of, and something the nanny never explained. And it all began on the night she sang that strange song. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe. Stories like this, stories with unanswered questions and moments no one can quite explain, they happen more often than people think. And this one is only just beginning. Long before the nanny ever walked through the gates, the story of Adrian Hale had already become a quiet burden inside one of the world's most influential families. His father, Marcus Hale, was a name recognized across continents, a man responsible for technologies that shaped entire industries. Nations relied on his innovations. Corporations watched his decisions carefully. Philanthropists praised his anonymous donations to hospitals, research centers, and emergency relief efforts. To the outside world, he was the picture of control and certainty. But inside his own home, there was a truth he kept hidden from the world. Adrian, his only child, was born perfectly healthy by every medical standard. Clear lungs, strong heartbeat, normal brain activity. Doctors even said he was one of the calmest newborns they had ever seen. Yet from the very first night, something was different. He didn't sleep. Not for a minute. Not for a brief doze. Not even in the gentle arms of his mother. His eyes stayed open, not wild or distressed, just quietly aware, as if he was observing a world he already understood. At first, the family believed it was just a newborn phase. But one night became two. Two became 4. A week passed, then a month, then a year. And the boy's eyes never closed. Every major medical institution Marcus contacted insisted on testing Adrian, and every result was the same. Normal. Completely normal. Normal, yet never sleeping. To protect his son, and perhaps to protect his own reputation, Marcus ordered absolute secrecy. No media, no leaks, no public curiosity. The Hale estate became guarded with levels of privacy usually reserved for heads of state. Only a few trusted staff members knew the truth, and even they rarely spoke of it. But inside the house, the strain grew heavier with every passing night. Marcus's wife, Elena, stayed awake beside their son for years, hoping he might finally rest. Her health weakened. Her voice lost its strength. The weight of watching her child remain awake through every hour of every day eventually pushed her into long periods of isolation. And then there were the nannies. 14 of them. Every one of them highly recommended. Everyone trained to care for children with unusual needs. Yet none lasted more than a week. Some quit in tears. Some simply left without explanation. One didn't even return to collect her final paycheck. They all described the same thing. A quiet child who never slept, who hummed melodies they couldn't place, who stared out of windows as if searching for something beyond the estate walls. As he grew older, Adrian spoke very little. He wasn't aggressive. He wasn't disruptive. He was just intensely observant. He would study shadows on the floor for hours. He traced patterns on the walls with his fingertips, and slowly he began to draw, not cartoons, not scribbles, but forests he had never seen. Tall, dark trees with long, thin branches that curved in shapes no one recognized. Landscapes that didn't match anywhere on Earth. Symbols woven into the trunks and roots. Symbols that made the staff uneasy, though none of them could say why. And then there were the songs. Late at night, when the mansion was quiet, Adrian would hum melodies no one had taught him. Patterns that didn't follow familiar scales. Rhythms that rose and fell in ways that felt older than language. These sounds traveled through the halls softly, like echoes from somewhere distant. Marcus Hale poured millions into research, determined to protect his son and uncover the cause of Adrian's strange condition. But the more he searched for answers, the less the world made sense to him. Science offered none. Medicine offered none. Experience offered none. And as the boy grew more aware, the tension around the estate deepened. Something was approaching his life, something no one could understand yet, and it would arrive in the form of a quiet woman with a name almost no one had ever heard before. The Hale family was known for solving the impossible. Marcus Hale built his empire by facing problems no one else could solve, but nothing in his career prepared him for the mystery growing inside his own home. As Adrian's sleepless years continued, the family expanded their search for answers. Neurologists were flown in from across the world: Japan, Germany, Switzerland, South Africa. each one arriving with confidence, armed with new theories and cutting-edge equipment. They studied brain activity, monitored circadian rhythms, ran tests that normal children would never need, and every skin told the same story. Adrian's mind was active, but in a way they couldn't categorize. Not hyperactive, not damaged, simply persistently awake, as if something inside him refused to shut down. Psychologists followed next. They observed him for days, watching his behavior, studying his drawings, listening to his strange, soft humming. Some suggested sensory issues. Others claimed emotional trauma, though none could explain where it would have come from. Sleep specialists tried everything from controlled environments to deep relaxation therapies. They dimmed the lights, played slow, calming tones, used temperature-regulated chambers designed to gently lull the body into rest. Nothing worked. One researcher, confident in her experience, insisted she could teach him to sleep through reinforced behavioral conditioning. She left halfway through the second night, shaken, refusing to explain what she witnessed in the quiet hours when the house was supposed to be still. As science failed, the family reached for help beyond research facilities. Church leaders from different regions were invited into the home. They prayed with sincerity. They spoke blessings over the boy, over the family, over the mansion itself. Candles were lit. Scriptures were read. Hands were placed gently on Adrian's shoulders. Yet after each prayer, he remained awake, his eyes calm, observing everyone as though he understood their intentions more deeply than they did. Every attempt, scientific or spiritual, ended the same way, with silence, worry, and the same lingering question the family couldn't answer. Marcus Hale was a man whose decisions shaped corporations, markets, and political discussions. But inside his home, he felt powerless. He began blaming himself for whatever was happening to his son. Was it his fault? Something passed through genetics? Something he'd exposed the boy to during pregnancy? Something caused by the technology he built? The weight of guilt began to consume him. His wife, Elena, grew distant under the strain. She loved her son fiercely, but the endless nights wore her down. She cried in rooms no one entered. She slept in short intervals, her exhaustion becoming part of the mansion's quiet routine. Conversations between the couple grew shorter. Arguments lasted longer. Neither wanted to blame the other, but the pressure of not knowing what troubled their son pushed them apart more than either expected. And the tension didn't stay inside the house. For the first time in years, Marcus began missing critical meetings. His executives noticed the fatigue in his voice. His decisions became slow, uncertain, reactive. Market analysts started questioning his leadership. During a major product launch, one expected to lift global markets, Marcus froze in the middle of his presentation. His mind drifted back to Adrian. Those eyes that never closed, the drawings he couldn't explain, the melodies that echoed through the halls late at night. His hesitation cost the company billions. Investors pulled out. Partnerships collapsed. The next morning, newspapers spread across tablet screens and boardrooms carried a headline no one ever expected to see. Tech giant faces uncertain future. And for the first time, Marcus understood something devastating. He had conquered industries, technology, and global influence, but the one thing he couldn't conquer was the mystery of his own child. The pressure around the Hale family tightened, and yet Adrian remained strangely calm, awake, aware, and waiting for something only he seemed to sense. Just when the family believed they had exhausted every option, just when the billionaire had spent millions on experts who gave him nothing but hope wrapped in failure, someone unexpected appeared at the gate of the mansion. Her name was Alara. No resume, no work history, no medical background, no psychology degree, just a soft-spoken woman dressed in simple clothes, with a calmness that felt almost unnatural. She didn't walk like someone applying for a job. She walked like someone who already knew she belonged there. When she reached the front door, she didn't pitch herself. She didn't beg. She didn't exaggerate her abilities like the dozens of nannies before her. She simply said, "I'm here for the boy." Everyone froze. The billionaire's wife almost laughed. The head butler tried to escort her away. Security reached for their radios. But then Elara added something that silenced the entire room. "I don't need much. Not wealth. Not status. I only ask for one thing, that I'm allowed to sing to Adrian at night." The request was strange. Too strange. The billionaire frowned. The wife whispered, "Another delusional woman." Even Adrian, standing in the hallway, stared at her with a blank expression. But his eyes didn't move away. For months the boy had been unresponsive. No emotion, no reaction, no expression. But now, he stared at her, almost like his body recognized something his mind couldn't explain. The family noticed. They didn't believe in miracles anymore, but they knew when something unusual was happening. Still, the doubt was stronger than the hope. "Why should we trust you?" the billionaire asked. Elara didn't blink. She placed a small wooden music box on the table, worn out, scratched, carved with symbols no one recognized. "I've cared for children like Adrian before," she said gently. "No one remembers me, but the children do." Her voice wasn't arrogant. It wasn't emotional. It was steady, dangerously steady. The billionaire's wife pulled her husband aside. "This is insane. No credentials, no ID, nothing. What if she's unstable?" The billionaire whispered back, "What if she's the only one who isn't?" At this point, desperation wasn't a weakness anymore. It was the only fuel they had left. And so, against every logical thought, against every expert's warning, against the discomfort they all felt deep in their bones, they hired her, not because they believed in her, but because they had run out of people to believe in. And as the guards led her into the mansion, Adrian stood completely still, watching her with wide, unblinking eyes. Something had shifted. The family didn't know it yet, but this woman, this soft-spoken stranger, was about to unravel secrets none of them were prepared for. Secrets about Adrian. Secrets about his condition. Secrets about why every expert had failed. And most terrifying of all, secrets about herself. The mansion was unusually quiet that night. No footsteps. No doctors whispering in hallways. No frustrated arguments between the billionaire and his wife. Just silence. Elara's first night. The family gathered outside Adrian's bedroom door, watching her through the narrow crack as she sat beside the boy's bed. No machines. No medical gadgets. No therapy tools. Just the music box. And her voice. She opened the music box gently, and it spun. But no sound came from it. It was as if the box was turning only to give rhythm to something older, something unseen. Then Elara began to sing. But what she sang wasn't a lullaby anyone recognized. No English. No Latin. No African dialect. No European melody. Not even something you could trace to ancient cultures. It was a sequence of soft, flowing syllables, like a language shaped before humans ever learned how to write. A language meant not for the world, but for one child, Adrian, the boy who never slept, the boy who never reacted, who had only known life through fear, tension, and silence. Went still. His breathing slowed. The tension in his fingers loosened. His eyes, which were always open and restless, began to flutter. Then something happened that no neurologist, no psychologist, no priest, and no parent had ever managed to provoke. A single tear slid down his cheek, then another, and another. The billionaire's wife gasped quietly, covering her mouth. She had prayed for years for this moment. Not for words, not for recovery, just for a sign that her son could feel. But what they witnessed next shattered every belief they had ever held. Adrian closed his eyes, and he slept. For the first time in his entire life, the boy finally slept. Ilara didn't celebrate. She didn't smile. She didn't show pride or surprise or fear. She simply placed her hand softly on his chest, feeling his breathing settle, and she whispered something none of them could understand. When the billionaire's wife finally gathered enough courage to speak, she stepped forward and whispered, "What was that song? Where did you learn it?" Ilara stood slowly, closing the music box with a soft click. Her face was calm, but her eyes were distant, as if they were remembering something painful or something forbidden. She turned to them and said only one sentence. "It was taught to me by someone who never slept." The billionaire's heart dropped. His wife's eyes widened. Even the head butler stepped back. But before any of them could question her, before they could process the weight of what she had just said, Ilara gently dimmed the lamp, tucked the boy in, and whispered, "Let him rest. Tonight is the beginning." And she walked out of the room, leaving the parents frozen in a mixture of relief and fear, because whatever she had sung, whatever ancient, unknown lullaby had just given their son something science couldn't. It didn't belong to any world they understood, and neither did she. Adrian's first night of sleep didn't just change the atmosphere in that mansion. It changed everything connected to the billionaire's world. For 16 years, the man had lived in constant exhaustion, signing papers with shaking hands, running global operations with a foggy mind, losing confidence, losing time, losing himself, because he feared that if he ever looked away, even for a second, his son might collapse under the weight of the mystery no one could solve. But the morning after Adrian slept, the billionaire woke up, fully rested for the first time in years. His mind felt clear, sharp, focused, like the version of himself the world once admired, the visionary who outpaced competitors even before they realized what he was building. When he stepped into his office that morning, executives stared. His presence felt different. His voice carried strength again. Not aggression, not panic, but certainty. And within just 1 week, people saw the shift. He called for a board meeting, not out of crisis, but opportunity. He drafted plans for a new technology no one expected, a project so ambitious that even his most loyal engineers hesitated to breathe as he explained it. For months before, he had been missing deadlines, delaying decisions, and struggling to make basic calls. But now, ideas flowed from him with the force of someone who had returned from the edge with a fire reborn. Every problem he once avoided became something he tore apart with precision. Every innovation he had put on hold suddenly came back to life, stronger, smarter, refined. And when the project finally launched, the world shook, competitors scrambled, markets surged, investors stampeded, stock prices soared in ways analysts couldn't predict. Within a year, he didn't just recover his fortune, he multiplied it. News outlets around the world plastered his face across their front pages. Tech empire doubles in record time. The man who never loses. The unstoppable return of a global giant. Reporters praised him. Economists studied him. Business schools turned him into a case study overnight. But despite all the glory, despite the interviews, the headlines, the awards, he kept one truth buried deep beneath the surface. It wasn't strategy. It wasn't intelligence. It wasn't genius. It was sleep, not his own, but his son's. Because the night Adrian finally closed his eyes, a weight lifted from the billionaire's soul, a weight so heavy it had been quietly destroying him for 16 long years. Now he had hope again, purpose again, and the world saw a man rising to impossible heights. While he alone knew, the real miracle happened in a dim bedroom, with a mysterious nanny singing a song no one understood. But even as his wealth exploded, a small question kept echoing in his mind. Why did that lullaby work? And who exactly was Alara? Even after Adrian slept, even after the Hale Empire regained its dominance, one question lingered quietly. Who was Alara? Curiosity turned into obsession. Marcus Hale, a man who could trace every business contact across continents, who could uncover hidden assets and secret networks in hours, found nothing about her. No birth certificates, no school records, no family, no history, no address, not even a photograph outside the one she had provided herself. Every search returned the same result: no records found. Experts in linguistics were brought in to study the lullaby. It didn't match any known language. No scale from any musical tradition on Earth contained the tones she had sung. Even the symbols carved into the wooden music box didn't correspond to any known alphabet or code. And yet, Adrian remembered. He hummed the melody during the day, softly, without instruction, with a precision that made Marcus's staff stare in disbelief. The tune flowed from him naturally, not taught, not memorized, but inherited in some unexplainable way. Late one evening, Marcus confronted Alara, desperate for answers. "Who are you? Where did this lullaby come from? Why did it work?" Her calm, unreadable face met his. She didn't flinch. She didn't hesitate. And then she said something that would haunt him forever. He was never sick. He was waiting. "Waiting?" Marcus asked, leaning closer. "Waiting for what?" Alara's lips barely moved. She didn't answer. Not in words. Not in gestures. She only looked at the boy, her gaze soft but knowing, almost reverent, as if she understood a secret the world would never see. And Marcus realized something terrifying. The child's condition, the sleepless years, the strange drawings, the melodies no one could decipher, was never a disease. It was a preparation, a silent, mysterious countdown he could not comprehend. Even as the billionaire controlled industries and rebuilt empires, he understood, in a way he never had before, that the real story had only begun. Alara was not just a nanny. Adrian was not just a child. Something older, something larger, something beyond understanding, was quietly unfolding in the rooms of that mansion. It was the quietest night the mansion had ever known. Then suddenly a scream. Piercing, urgent, uncontainable. Adrian's voice echoed through the halls. "It won't protect me anymore." Every light in the mansion flickered, then went out. Darkness swallowed the rooms. The family scrambled, flashlights cutting through the shadows. The billionaire ran, heart pounding, fear clawing at him for the first time in decades, toward his son's room. And there, in the doorway, she stood, Alara, the calm presence, the woman no one understood. She began to sing. Her voice filled the room, low and steady, every note perfectly measured. The walls seemed to vibrate with the sound. Even the monitors in the room, connected to Adrian's heartbeat, began to pulse, syncing with the rhythm of the song. The mansion shook as if responding to something far beyond physics. Furniture rattled. Portraits swayed. Staff clutched one another, whispering prayers. Marcus burst into the room, eyes wide, breath catching, and then he saw it. Adrian's chest rose and fell in perfect harmony with the heartbeat on the monitor. Every tremor, every pulse, perfectly aligned with the melody Alara sang. Then silence. Adrian's breathing evened out. His hands relaxed. And for the first time in months, maybe years, he slept completely peacefully. But when the parents blinked, she was gone. No goodbye, no explanation, no trace, except the music box she had left on the bedside table. Marcus picked it up. Inside, carefully folded, was a note, a transcription of the lullaby, written in symbols no one could read, no one could interpret. Only the music remained, and the mystery deepened further. The boy was safe. The house was still. And yet the answers had vanished with her. Marcus Hale, the man who had everything, finally understood a truth no amount of money could teach him. He had all the wealth in the world, all the power, all the influence. Yet the one who saved his son had asked for nothing. He funded global sleep research, hired the brightest minds, and commissioned projects to study Adrian's newfound patterns. But the lullaby remained unsolved. The melody, the symbols, the connection, all beyond comprehension. And in quiet moments, he realized, some of life's greatest miracles don't come from power. They come from the overlooked, the humble, the unseen. He told the world, sometimes the greatest miracles come from the people we overlook. Adrian slept through nights like any other child. The mansion felt lighter, and Marcus finally understood the value of patience, trust, and the mysteries life refuses to explain. What do you think that lullaby really was? Could there be others like Ilara, watching over children we think we understand? Should I cover the shocking story of the billionaire who adopted the girl with the golden voice next? Comment below and subscribe for more untold billionaire stories that will shock and inspire you.